Now, we talked about you got product, you go in this. Okay, now is the process, okay? Okay, you want a chair or a stool. You got to come up with a business card or something so you can give them something so they can have it, okay? I'm going this way, guys. Okay, you need to come up with methodologies for how you, if you're going to have some kind of portraits or some kind of cutouts and you need to raise them. Either you can pay for wood stands, you can make them, and I use that duct tape or duct tape like stuff. And that's, you know, this simplistic, or you can buy them. So, you know, you need to have some kind of stands or some kind of mechanism to hold whatever your product is. Now, we've got a tent, and we're going to show it in a little bit, but we've got a tent, okay? You put up the tent. Before I do anything, the first thing I do is I make sure that this tent is weighted. Okay? Now, most of the time, you're on asphalt, you're on concrete, and you cannot put anything in. You can go to yard sales, and there's a lot of people, especially if you go like maybe in the summertime. In January, they did a New Year's resolution that they were going to get weights. Okay? And then they have a yard sale, and they're probably selling them by that time. But I'm saying, these work well. 25 pounds. What I normally do is I go like this, and I go like that, and that's what I use as my weights on the outside to make sure it holds down. That's one methodology. Easy to transport, or you know, easier to transport. They're still heavy, but what I'm saying, I like about 45 to 50 pounds on every corner, because this is right now the way it is. I'm inside. This is an umbrella, and it's even a. I'm going to call it. It is a very high quality umbrella because it doesn't let the wind out. It goes in and goes up. I've seen these things go many feet in the air. And I've seen them do some really interesting stuff. And remember, this is my tent, and where this tent lands, it's my responsibility. And I have seen them. It's going to land on pottery, stained glass, or very high expensive artwork. And they don't land softly. I did one at the show, it was really interesting. It went straight up in the air, came down, and if you can imagine, it landed with the tops touching. 4 of us ran over and were able to, we saw it, other vendors, we saw it, and we went and grabbed it, because when it slid down, it would have slid right into stained glass and a lady who was doing artwork. But we were able to get it and take it down. But I'm saying it just came up and went straight down, but it landed, luckily it landed on its top. Otherwise, it landed on its feet, it would have gone right through the guy's tent. So that's one thing to look at. And the other way to do it, this is what I do. About 50 pounds, okay? What you do, just get you some PVC pipe, and then what you do is get you I think you call them eye screws, those big eye bolts, okay? And what you do is get a bunch of nuts for that eye bolt, and then get a bunch of trash metal, just a bunch of trash metal. And what you do is put a nut, put a piece of that trash metal, put another nut, go down a little bit, because what you want to do is you want to get it, you're kind of making it so it can't pull back out on you, you know what I'm saying? So it doesn't pull back out, so you put that in. And then fill it with concrete. Now, I only used this on the bottom only because I was going to use them on both sides, but this cap's expensive. You know, those are expensive, so I didn't need it. So this is what I do, okay? I'm going to do this on the outside of the tent only because you can see, okay? But I would normally do, that'll work. I normally do it right here on the inside. Now, the worst thing that people do, okay, and this is a rope I have, and you notice I have this knot here, which is very helpful. And it's going to be interesting, not going to come into play because of the fact I'm so low. But a lot of people, what they'll do is they will take their weights and figure, okay, I've got weights, and the only way they're going to work, the only way they'll work is, and I'm not even going to do it, if they're hanging from the tent. Okay? Worst thing you can do. 4 or 5 shows, and it's bent. It's bent, all this stuff. Think about it. The weight, just because, well, that's the only way it's going to hold the tent down if it's hanging from the tent. And I'm saying, no. If I've got this here, and I've got it here, that tent, once it goes up, it's got to raise that weight off the ground. So you want them on the ground, okay? So I would normally go across in here, and I usually go across this top up here, and then, so I have this, and it's usually on the inside here, like this, and then, in my case, what I do is I take these, I'm going to pretend it's tied, and what I do is I take these through here, and I put those on there, and I put 2 of them, and that way they stay right there. And you say, why do I do that? Number one, they're out of the customer's way, they're safe, and when I put the covers on it at night and stuff, they're out of the way. Okay? But you can make these, and I do 4 of them, and this is what I use for my weights. They're a little bit of a, you know, they're heavy, but they do their thing. And then what I do is I have a, I'm gonna let that down. I have a mechanism. What I do is I usually come down. This would come down through the weight, and then what I do is I just come in here, and as everybody knows, you can pull down. It gives you that double the force or double the resistance. So that's one thing I do there. Okay. Now, other things you need along that same line. You can pick them up at garage sales and whatever. These are dog stakes. Okay. They work well. What you do if you're on ground, you can put them in here, screw them down. They hold well and do a good job. My most favorite are these. Okay. And I do not use them like this. I do not use them in the pretend this is the ground right here. This is the ground right here. I don't put them in the ground like that. And then put my strap, you know, my tie down from here to this. Because what happens, they pull up. You got soft ground. What I do is I put them in like this. I put one in here. This is my tent. This is my tent corner. I put them in like this, and they're in the ground. And what happens is now I have this hole right here, and I just put my thing here. Think about that. With that going that direction, and now I pull up, it ain't going anywhere because you got pulling that way and pulling this way, and it's not pulling back against it. So this is what I use, and this is a relatively simple way if you've got the ability to stake. And if I have the ability to stake, I use these, and I still stake my tent. And I make sure it doesn't fly in the air and cause a problem. And this is what I use to stake my tent. And when I bought them, I said, oh crap, they only have fluorescent orange. But now I'm glad I bought them. Because now from a safety standpoint, when I've got this on my tent, and I've got that there, and I can ratchet it, and you know, gee, I'm outside. I could ratchet it to and it's long. I could do it to a tree. I could do it to a fence. I could do it to a number of things. But I put 4 of these on my tent to hold it down. People laugh at me. I do it in the middle of the summer. I did it in July. I was telling somebody earlier here, I did it at a July show down in Rutledge. Okay? Beautiful day. Storm came through. There was 100 tents. There was only 20 of us left standing. My tent was still fine. There was no tent around me that was still there. I mean, they blew all over the place. And when the tent blows, what else happens? So does your product and everything else. And so these work well. They're inexpensive when you think about it in the long run. Once you get this mechanism figured out, once you get it figured out, then it works easy. But I'm saying those are good. Okay? Another thing you need You need things like this. For some reason, I found this at a show and really like it. It was some bricks, some slate bricks. These are my levelers. Because if you're outside, no matter where you do a show outside, the ground is always perfectly level. Okay? So this allows you to do it. This is what I use. I can dig it in, a little bit heavier, but they seem to work. Now, the other thing that I use, and I didn't bring it with me, is, if you think about this, take about 10 or 15 pieces of wood. You know, not real big, maybe 4x4 is the biggest one, okay? 3/4 of an inch thick, 1/2 inch, maybe 2x4, whatever it is, okay? Go take them to your drill press and put about a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch hole through the middle of them, okay? And then run a piece of rope through the middle of them and then tie them. Now you've got your levelers and they're in a nice neat package and you got any size you need. You just untie it, use the ones you want, put them in there, and then, you know, they're all in a nice neat package then. They're all in one spot. But, you know, that's just what you want to use and whatever. I found those and I use those levelers. Now, goes along that same line. They're going to give you a spot. You don't have much choice. I always say, stay in your spot. Don't expand. Don't try to overexpand. I mean, some shows will allow you, and you know which ones they are, and you learn after a while, but stay within your stand, because you get on the bad side of the promoters of the show, guess what show you don't come back to? You know, so stay in their good graces, be one of their, they tell me where my spot is, you know, and it's happened to me. They come back to me and said, you know, you're the only person that hasn't complained about their spot at the show. I said, you know, I got what I got. You know, I mean, I have to work with what I get. It's amazing. The next year I got a much better spot. You know, because everybody complained. Well, I don't like that spot. I don't like this one. I don't like, you know, what I'm saying is, okay, but use your spot as wisely as you can. But then when you set up in your spot, look at your spot and see, okay, where is the water going to come from? You know, where am I going to have tripping factors for my customers coming into my booth? You know, there may be tree branches, there may be tree roots, there may be other things. So you got to work around that. Like I said, if I got a tree root in the front of mine, and I know customers are going to trip on it, that's maybe where I put my saw. I put my saw on top of it, okay? Now, along that same line, and I'm going to play with the tent now. You won't see me on camera. Okay, when I first did this, I took my saw and said, okay, my saw is just going to draw people to my booth. It's just going to suck them right in, okay? So I want to suck them in. So I put my saw in the back corner of my booth. This was the first show I ever did. I put it in the back corner of my booth, and they were just going to come right in. They were just going to suck them right in. Well, it sucks them right in, but they can't see it. So they didn't know it existed or whatever. So I did the whole show and didn't do really well. And there was a guy across the way that came to me and he said, you know, he said, the next time you set up, if you take that saw and you move that saw where you put those round display cases over there in the corner of your booth on the outside, and then move the display bases back in the corner, you'll do much better. And I went, you got 5 minutes? In 5 minutes time, I changed it. It changed my sales like triple. I put my saw out on the outside and it's never since left that, the ones that have seen me do it or whatever. Because now I'm out here and I can stop people. I can talk to them. I get them. They see what I'm doing. And all it takes is one person to stop. The next thing I look up, I've got 20 people in front of me. Okay? Now, when you got 20 people in front of you, what happens? They're looking behind me. And what's behind me? My product. And maybe they'll buy. And I always make free puzzles for the kids, and I just don't. They just can't reach in a bag and grab it. They have to sit there, and I make it for them. It takes about a minute and a half or whatever. And while they're sitting there, the parents aren't going to let the kids stay there by themselves, so they stay there. So they're looking at my booth. Along that same line, I used to be really worried in the early days. Oh, I'm stopping all these people, and they're blocking the view of the booth next to me here and the booth over here. You know, these these guys are not going to be happy with me. Just the opposite effect. I heard after a couple times shows they did. They asked to be next to me because their philosophy was, you stop them, I grab them. So it was. So you got to look at that and work with your customers and be cognizant of that when you're working with your customers and stuff. I have to be cognizant a little bit depending on what they have. If I've got a cloth person next to me or a sweater person or garment type person, if I can, I'll locate my saw on the other side because I don't know what that wind's going to do, and I just don't want to dust everything up in the fabric or whatever. But anyway, so those are things you got to think about. Okay. We talked about, these are also handy. They're handy for a couple things. They're handy like when you're closing up at night, you can make sure that everything is closed. I put one on the thing, I put them around here or whatever. And they also come in handy when you're selling stuff, i.e., okay, you need tea bags. You need to have something to send your product home in. So, you can put them there and you got them. You know where they always are. You can put them somewhere else, wherever you want to do them. So that's an easy way to do stuff. You got to have some way to do that. Have a tape measure. Sometimes these 10 by 10 booths are only 6 by 6 because they're set up by volunteers and they don't understand. And I'm trying to get my tin in here, and my stake is right there, and my other stake is right here, and so then I have to go to the people and say, guys, I have a opportunity here, and they don't realize it, and it can be a big opportunity because there's no place to. I can't move because I'm going to screw up everybody all the way down. So they'll move me to another good spot. But anyway, so that's helpful. Okay, if you're going to go and you're going to get electricity of anything, or there's electricity there, two things are very handy to have. This is very handy to have. Not because I'm going to use multiple plugs, is if there is only one connection or there's only two outlets, I can put my outlet in, and now my neighbors on both sides can also put in. And I haven't taken all the power, and they normally just have a single plug. So I can always get in if I put this in its place. They say, well, I've already got the plug. Can I put the, oh yeah, that's not a problem at all. And then plugs like this are very nice. These are nice because so many times, see, I know I got electricity. So that way, that's also helpful along the way. So different things like that. A box of these can come in very handy. These are just your tie downs and different things, but they work down. Now, a lot of people like to tie down. And remember I said, when you do stuff, you always, the weather is always, you always have to know it's going to rain, okay? This is what I always tell people at all the shows that I see if they don't have them. And I've got a hospital group that I'll be going to in 3 weeks. It's in July. They're in Blairsville, and they hug me and kiss me because I saved. They did a bake sale. They had 2 tents and they did a bake sale, but their tent was leaking like a sieve. Okay, so I sent them. I gave the guy $5. I was just messing with him. I gave him $5. I said, I want you to go to Walmart and buy swim noodles. Swim noodles? Why would I buy swim noodles? I said, go buy swim noodles. So he went to the store and bought swim noodles. And when he comes back, this right here can save you all your problems, will save your tent for a long, long time. Because what you're going to do, I don't know if the camera's going to be able to see this or not, but you see how this is right here? Okay, when it rains, okay, the rain comes down a little bit, and it comes down a little bit. Let's see if I can do it this way. The rain comes down, it comes down a little bit, and then eventually the water creates enough weight that now it creates a water pocket. And then what do? You're on the inside of the tent doing this. So you're putting little pinholes every time you do that. But you leave the show at 6 o'clock and it's still raining. Okay? And you come back the next morning, and I've seen many, many tents, which I call imploded, where this has gone inside, and there's stuff inside called product that gets ruined. So these are about $1, okay? And what you do is you take them, let's see, I can do it over here easier. You come in here, And there's, I'll do it this way. Okay, for right now, I'm going to do it like this. And then we'll show how to do it. If I take this, by taking it and putting this in here like this, and taking this and putting this in here like this, what it does is it forces the top of the tent up. Now you'll see that. I'll do it. Oh. Come on. Help me out here. Okay. So that's here, okay? So that tent's there, okay? Now, if I come in here, see how there's a here and here? If I come in here, and I come in here, and I come in here and do this, and I come in here and do this, now, when I do that in all four places, there's no way for the water to puddle. So therefore, you know, if I do this, see, there's no way the water, you say, okay, it's great, but what happens is now I've tightened it up, and it's just going to run off, and it's easy to do. It costs $1 a piece. Keeps tents from imploding. Another thing people do is you got to have signage. Okay? I've seen them take everything and come over here and put a tie down in here and try to put some methodology to keep this thing here. My method is magnets. Okay? So I come over here. Remember, this is 10 foot in the air. I am not magnetizing it to this aluminum frame. This is an aluminum frame. It's not going to work on aluminum magnets. But you put a magnet through on the back cloth and a magnet on the other side. I don't care how much wind you have. It doesn't work. I have loaned those to people that are sitting there, and the next door neighbor is, you know, can't get their, I said, ma'am or sir, would you like me to help you put your sign up? Because maybe it's their first time or they hadn't done it in a while. And they go, what do you mean? I said, here. And so I go over there I give them for them. I said, just return these to me, please, at the end of the show because, you know, I may need, and I put their sign up and they go, honey, we need to get some of those. Where do you get them? Where do you get them? Okay. Now, remember I said, what kind of tent did I say to get? What color? White. Okay, so you're doing a show and there's 100 white tents. And you have a 10 by 10 space. You need to differentiate your tent from everyone else's. And stay within the guidelines of all show promoters. I've never run into a problem yet. So what I do, in my case, is I have a sign. And then what I do is I add this to it, and I have a 10 foot by 10 foot space, right? That's linear, right? Doesn't say anything about height. He's not going to come off any. So what I do is I now have a 10 foot pole that I put this above my tent in the wind, and so it flies and flutters. And what I do is it's on a PVC, and I have it here. And guess what I tied to this pole with? Velcro. My Velcro straps. 3 Velcro straps, and it stays fine. And I put it way up there. Now you're going to see another thing that I always do. I always put an American flag on my tent, and it's on a triangular type base thing. So what happens is I have the base here, and the base is on PVC, but when the wind blows, the flag moves. So therefore, I don't get the fort, you know what I'm saying? I don't get that constant force on my tent because now the flagpole is moved with the direction of the wind. You'll see it in the thing. But anyway, so I do this in the wind. And then, all of you have been around here long enough, there's a thing in Marietta called the Big Chicken. What do people use it as? A guide. So many times, and you've heard it if you've ever done shows or you've done it yourself. Gee, I really like that product. I'll come back and get it. Okay? Sometimes they don't mean that, but sometimes they do, but the problem is they can't figure out how to get back there. But in my case, I've got my puzzle sign up and my American flag, and so many times I hear people on the phone, they're on the phone and say, yeah, dear, come down the row. It's the row with the row with American flag and the puzzle sign. Just come down and meet me down here. So I become a landmark at the show, so therefore people know how to get back to me. I mean, it's just little things. This is my personal opinion. It works, but that's just my personal opinion. Okay, that's the process. The other side of the process. Other side of the process is, where'd it go? Where'd my thing go? I was looking for my step stool.
Over there, on the wall, on the far wall over there.
Okay. Okay. Now, you have to get to the show. Okay. Now, this to me, this is we'll talk about this in a second. This is two things. In actuality, it's safety. Because when you go to a show, I'm short. And you got to put stuff up. You want to hang stuff up. You want to do this. I forgot to put the sign up, so now I got to put the sign up, okay? So what do a lot of people do? They take that folding chair that they shouldn't have with you, and they stand on it, which is not safe, okay? Or they step on something else, or they try on their tiptoes, okay? So I always bring this, okay? Now, this gives me the ability to do what I need to get up high, fix stuff, or whatever it is. But in my case, I also use it, okay, kid, step up one step and put your hands on the rail. Now they're up high enough so they can see me do my puzzle. So I use it both ways. But to me, a step stool is kind of a necessity no matter what product you're selling, because it's a safety function. So many times, think about it, you need something to get up and raise up. So that's a good thing. Okay, when you go to shows, you got to get to the show. You got to move stuff around. You got to move stuff out of your vehicle or wherever it is. So these two things come in handy. This one gets used more. This one gets used more on the second day versus the initial setup, because this is like when I'm coming back in, can't bring my vehicle in, and I need to bring a cooler and drinks and whatever it is. Now these are nice. You can buy cheap ones, you can buy single ones or whatever, but I like these because I get this ability. I can put, in my case, I can put about 12, 14 boxes on them. They got bigger wheels. They don't bog down into the, just untake it if you need to. They don't bog down in the mud and that type stuff. This one is cool. Everybody's seen these, haven't they? These are cool. They're about 50 bucks. They're not bucks. And what you got is you got this. You got your handle. That goes down there, shuts down. You take this. It goes in a bag, and that's how big it is. Handy. I mean, once you get one, they're really handy. I mean, I take it to that place when we go to Rob's, when I'm taking stuff into Rob's house, take it out of my truck, put it in here, and wheel it into Rob's shop. It's a lot easier than carrying it. But I'm saying, it folds down, holds about probably 200 pounds, 150, 200 pounds. But I'm just saying, very handy. This will allow it to come up. This allows it to go like this, and it goes all over the place. Whoops, oh yeah, what I'm saying, then I got to do this. What I'm saying, you can haul a lot of stuff in it. See, I had a lot of props, and I apologize. But sometimes props, if you can see them, these are handy. Okay, you take this, and you take that chair, now you got a checkout stand. Usually when you do a setup and stuff, you usually have room behind your tent, usually. So you could have a nice setup stand. You can put receipt books and that stuff on here and whatever. But that gives you a checkout table. But it's high. It matches the high table. You're going to laugh at this. But this is a very handy item. This is a paint thing, okay? Well, remember, your people in the booth next to you are your friends, okay? And if they become good friends, and sometimes a lot of places, good shows will give you, you'll pay for a 10 by 10 space and they'll give you a 12 by 12 space. Okay? Which is what you really need if they're really, if they are vendors putting it on, they understand. Because if I have a 10 by 10 space and I have another tent smack right next to me and it rains, you can't put up your covers, you can't do a whole lot of stuff, because remember, you can't get to it on the inside anymore because you've got a table, you've got your baker's racks or whatever. So if they give you a little bit more room, it gives you that ability to squeeze between the tents to get stuff, okay? It also, if you get a 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 straight across, there's no way for people to get from the front of their booth to the back of their booth in some cases if they don't have an opening in the back, you know? But what this is another friend of mine that, remember I said they always, when they signed up, they always said, oh, I want to be next to Hans, okay? So they were. So what we did is we bought these. And if you take these and you put them, remember this is in the air. So you put this here and I put this to her booth over here, okay? And if we both have 12 by 12 spaces and I take my tent and put it as far that way as I can go and she goes this way, we have 4 foot in the middle, right? So what we do is we each have one of these and we put it in, and then we take our flaps and put them over, and now we have 40 square feet of extra showing space that we jointly show our stuff. But I'm saying, so that way we get extra space and it's there, and you know, yeah, if it's pouring down rain, we don't do it, but I'm just saying, this gives, because all we're doing is taking this, and our flaps, if you have one of these tents, they got flaps, they just go up, and a lot of them have Velcro, and you just Velcro it onto here, and this works slick. This gives us more showing space. Now, we usually don't let people come in this way, but and then what we do is have them go in one booth and come out the other. So we drive people to both sides of our booth. So this is an odd item to have, but it's a helpful item. If you are going to read, read what you're making. Read what you're doing. You know, read a book. I mean, if you're going to read something about your product that you're doing. Customers do not feel that they're bothering you. Okay? Whereas if you're reading like a paperback or a novel or something else. So read something that's yours. Have a business card. Okay, now.